I tell you that other one time was the time. You got it already.
Hello, welcome to Room B. I'm your host, Rumbii. I just realized that my dog must have gotten to my microphone because there's dog hair everywhere. Guess it's inevitable. I have had a really good week, I've actually had a good week. That's in regards to my mental health, in that I have been very stable over the last week. It's nice to just go through a week where there are no extremes. The pendulum didn't swing too hard in either direction. So that is a good week to me. My sleep has also been great. It's working wonders. And I think that's one of the major reasons, if not the major reason, why I am having a good mental health week. I've mentioned this before. My sleep is sort of like the marker for when I know that my mental health is about to go down the drain. And so having such positive, satisfactory sleep has been, I feel like a new person, honestly. That gloomy sort of like lack of motivation that weighs heavy on you because of depression, that's not there. I don't feel like I have a dark hole in my chest right now, which is something that I constantly feel like. I have a lot of memories of just having this heavy weight or dark hole on my chest, and right now it's not there. And I have moments where I try to like listen for it. Like, is it still there? Is this all a lie? Like, am I just feeling good in this moment? So it's nice to know that I'm a little bit free from that feeling for now. So unfortunately, having a good week means that there's not much of an update for you guys because things have been okay. And honestly, I'm here for it. I'm honestly here for it. I do want to talk to you guys about mental health stigma. And that's something I've talked about in the past, like how stigma kind of affected how I approached seeking help. And it affected my decision to even like open up about mental health in the first place. So I just wanted to share with you guys a few tips to help you stop stigma, specifically for the person with mental health issues. I'm going to give you 3 tips. And if I have time, I might give you some extra bonus ones. Who knows? But these three, I think, are the most important ones. And I think it's a good starting point for you to be able to just separate yourself from that stigma, because it really does love to weasel its way into our thinking, our feelings, and essentially our treatment plan as well. So the first step is to talk about it. I know everybody says this, but I also want to acknowledge that it is the hardest step. It's the most difficult step to do. And I'm not saying this to discourage you, I'm saying this to just be realistic. This advice is easier to give than it is to apply. So I just want you to think about initiating that conversation in like a in like zones. So think of like yourself, you're in the middle of these zones, right? You're surrounded. Think of like a dartboard or something like that. You're right in the middle, and the people in your life create the circles around you. And obviously, the further away the circle, the further away the relationship to you. Find someone that you feel comfortable enough to share this with, and describe what it's like to have that specific mental health issue and the impact it has on you. You don't have to talk about anybody else, just talk about how that affects you. And I think that's a great first step, because then it helps the people around you understand what you are going through. Because if you start talking about an example of somebody else or what other people go through, it will be difficult for them to actually meet your needs, to support you the way that you need to be supported. So practice that. And the more comfortable you are and the more confident you are, the easier it gets. And once you've gone through that initial circle, whether it's your siblings first or your parents first, doesn't matter, it's up to you. Move on to the next circle. Maybe that's your friends. And once you're done with friends, move on to the other circle. Maybe it's work colleagues. Only if you feel like doing this, by the way. You can determine how many circles you want to go outside of to share this information with. Just be aware that the more people you share this with, the more likely you're about to face stigma, because it's a numbers game, right? Chances are the more people you include in what's going on with you, the more likely you are going to face that stigma. And I'm also going to be very realistic and say you are going to tell some people who you think are going to be supportive, but are the complete opposite. And that's the roughest part, because those are the moments that we learn to withhold ourselves, because you have such a bad experience with someone who you thought you could trust, and they break that trust, and so that reinforces our inability to share. But I hope you understand that that reinforcement of not speaking out, that's also part of stigma. So just remember, it's going to weasel its way in somehow. Stigma is always going to be there, because humans are both good and bad. So you just have to accept that there are going to be some people who will surprise you, and be prepared for that, because once it happens, then you know who not to talk to. So the second tip I want to share is to normalize mental health. You have to be the one to normalize it. A good example is to describe mental health to people around you using the analogy of physical health. If someone breaks a leg, everybody knows that that leg is broken. Even people who don't know you will see you and be like, okay, that person has a broken leg. We have to make sure that they're taken care of. Everyone just agrees upon that, right? Even when it's not spoken. But for some reason, nobody affords the same grace for people with mental health issues. So you have to make sure that people realize that mental health is important, and it's something that requires treatment and support. I want to tell you something. In my culture, people with mental health issues are not treated right. They're not treated fairly. I remember my first interaction with people with mental health issues was through the members of the community who were very neglected, to the point where their treatment was absolutely atrocious. They don't have homes, they don't have the healthcare they need, they don't have the family support. In fact, growing up in a country that treated their community members like that from a very young age, it was ingrained in my mind that anything to do with your brain that isn't part of the status quo is crazy, and nobody likes that, and nobody wants to be around that. And that's before I even had this discussion with my mom, my sisters, the people in my family. Just the environment I was in told me that if you lose your mind, you are on your own. And so, can you imagine what it was like when I finally got diagnosed? And I had never grown up around an environment that made me feel as though I was safe if my mind wasn't okay. Those things didn't normalize mental health to me. And so I think it's our duty as people who suffer from mental health issues to normalize it, to talk about it when you can, when you are in the right mind state, when you're in a good place where you're able to talk about what you go through. Talk about it as much as you can, and practice talking about it. It's very weird. I can't lie to you. I've had moments where I'm speaking to a stranger and I'm like, girl, you really shouldn't be saying this stuff. But I'm like, you never know. You never know. This person could be going through something that I don't know about. Or they have someone they know who's going through something similar and they don't know how to deal with it. But by me sharing it and talking about it, it allows people to start seeing things a little bit differently, to actually start having a conversation about this. So, yes, it is up to you to normalize it. And then the final thing that I think is very important when it comes to reducing mental health stigma is to seek support and treatment. And this serves two functions. On one hand, your needs are getting met and you're getting the appropriate care for your needs. But on the other hand, the more we use certain services, the more the people in charge who give money to the services are able to say, oh, actually, people use this, so we should put more money into it. All of those things work hand in hand in reducing stigmas, right? So Most people who struggle with mental health issues require some sort of support. And so it's important that you reach out to a trusted friend or family member to help you find the services that you need and to support you in those moments when you're feeling overwhelmed. The first time I went out to get mental health support, I spoke to my sister. She, to me, had previously kind of given off the vibe that she experiences some poor mental health. And so when I realized what I was going through, naturally I felt safer talking to her about it. Because honestly speaking, nobody else had kind of created that kind of environment. Not to say that it meant that any of my other sisters didn't support that. No, it's just that through our interactions, I felt a little bit more confident to share what I was going through with that specific sister. And she was the one who told me, like, girl, go see a doctor, like now. I remember I spoke to her, and the very next day I was at the doctor's office. Not only did she realize that I needed help, but she convinced me to go. So you need to really think about who it is around you you feel the most comfortable around. It doesn't even have to be a friend or family member. It could be a colleague. You might be closer to someone else than I am, you know? Whoever you find to be most confident around, safest around, and you know that they're going to put you first, talk to them. Make sure that that person does not mind being able to do these things for you. You also got to make sure that you're not overstretching people, you're not overextending people, because then you don't want to create their own mental health crisis. So just think about that. I did say I was going to share a couple bonuses. And the first one I want to mention is that beware of the language that you use. Be very careful with the words that you use because words have meaning, okay? Words have meaning and they reflect our beliefs, they reflect our values, they reflect our attitudes. And so make sure that you're not self stigmatizing. So you have to lead by example. The second thing I want to say is you're bound to become a mental health advocate. The moment you have any education, any information, any insight, any evidence that can help anybody else in a similar situation to you, you should share it. You really should share it. There is no better way of us to learn about the personal impacts of small incremental changes to our mental health issues that benefit everybody. It benefits everyone, not just you, but the people around you. Talking is so essential to mental health. That's why it's even part of the treatment. So you gotta talk about these things, you guys. We have to. No matter how scary, how confusing, how different they are, we have to share them. And I feel like the more we do that, that's how you break down that stigma. So that's what I have to share with you guys this week. I hope that you think about how you yourself have contributed to mental health stigma, and hopefully this is a starting point to help you feel as though you can start to break it down. With that said, I hope that you stay awesome, be kind, and spread positivity.